Hey guys, welcome back to episode 5 of Ordinary Heroes Better in 20, where we talk about faith, family, and the pursuit of purpose. I am your host, Mauricio, and today's episode is very special. I'm joined by an incredible guest, Becky DeBlaey. She's a grandmother, mother, educator, researcher, a friend to many kids, and I love how she says, mother's helper. Ms. Becky, you have an undergraduate in Christian education with focus in Bible and psychology, and a master's in education and child development. Becky grew up in a large family with 9, and your story is filled with resilience, passion, and the kind of wisdom that I know will inspire our audience. We're going to dive into her journey from childhood to motherhood to her latest work. So grab a coffee, settle in, and let's step into this powerful conversation with Ms. Becky DeBlaey. Ms. Becky, I would like to step back a bit because your story really begins with your family and the home you grew up in. So paint a picture for us. What was life like as a child in such a large, faith-driven family?
It was full and fun and silly and raucous and loud. And there was lots of talking because there were mostly females in the household. I have 5 sisters and 1 brother.
Wow.
My brother recently said he never got a word in edgewise, but to his credit, he knew how to hold his own. So yes, it was a wonderful place, and it wasn't without troubles.
Mm.
We knew what consequences meant,
Mm.
and we knew our responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And if we didn't, we were gently taught them. Our parents struggled with us, just like I see other parents struggling with their children, but they didn't despair. I never saw my parents despairing.
Mm.
I think I saw them in great sorrow at different times when some of us did some things that were very naughty and caused a lot of consequences
Mm-hmm.
that were hard to go through. So they were ordinary in that way, but I think that their faith and they knew they had a resource that was greater than them,
Mm.
and they knew how to tap into that resource. That was their daily life.
Yeah.
I always saw my mother and my father praying and reading their Bibles and hearing my dad sing and my mother, just talking with people. That was daily life.
Wow.
So there were times that were really hard. I can remember seeing my mom's face just white as a ghost, just troubled for our safety
Mm-hmm.
and troubled for what was going on in the neighborhood. I was 10 years old when I had my second move in my life. I was 3 months old when my parents moved me the first time. And the second time I was 10, and my father accepted another church. And that's why we moved those different times. And we moved my second time in my life, and we moved away from Detroit. And it wasn't because of the situation, but we were in the situation. And we moved the year of the Detroit riots.
Oh, wow.
So that was highly formative for me. And how just different things that were going on at that time. And I can remember my mom's face just very troubled. She must have gotten a call from somebody because I brought a friend home from school. And the friend that I brought home from school was not white like me. And I think there was enough social unrest that created a reason for my mother's face to go pale.
Wow.
So mother saying, "Where's your brother?" when he was 3 years old, and crossing the busy road during rush hour on a tricycle, driving underneath vans.
Oh my, that's funny.
So yes, they were real people. They were real people. But they had a hope that was noticeable. So, yeah.
Can you tell us about that hope, that resource? What did they tap into?
What did they tap into? Well, I think, Dad was a pastor.
Yeah.
He was always studying the Bible. He was always teaching the Bible.
Mhm.
And my mother as well. She held Bible studies.
Mhm.
She led Bible studies. She taught Sunday school.
Mm.
So she was always in the Word.
Mm.
And mother had her testimony down pat. She could tell you her testimony, and we could almost recite it for you.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's great.
You know, so and then my father the same way. So they had a faith and a love for people,
Mm.
huge love for people.
Mm.
Oh, there were always people over at our house, and Dad was always talking to people,
Hmm.
always interchanging with them about all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Having rabbits,
Oh, I got some.
yeah, 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 different things. So, where did their hope come from? It came from God.
Mm.
They they believed in a sovereign, one God, a
Wow.
creator of heaven and earth.
That's right.
And I knew nothing else. As I've often asked myself that question, how did I get to this place that I can't even imagine thinking that there's another deity? I ask myself that question, and there's nothing within myself that I can pull out and say, there's another God. There's another supreme being. I only know of one. And I think it's because they chose that one.
Mm.
And that's all they talked about. And that's who they believed in.
Mm.
And so I did.
That's important.
I
It's
did.
it's not just to say it, but live it every day. And that
Yes.
sounds like that's what was
Yes.
your case.
Yes, definitely. Mhm.
Well, fast forward a little bit and you became a mother of 3 sons
Mhm.
and an educator. So, how did your upbringing influence the way that you parented
Hmm.
and the work you felt called to do?
Oh, my upbringing. I thought I had it licked.
Mm.
I had a good example.
Yeah.
I had read. I thought, parenting, it's just follow the pattern, right? And then what happened was we had our first child, and then we lost our second.
Oh.
We lost our third, and then our fourth one came, and he stuck around,
Mm.
and he was born. And during those times of losing these children, I just started to realize that we can do all that we can to plan to be a parent,
Hmm.
but it's not in our cards for that final decision.
True.
And so parenting then became a gift.
Ah.
And it became a gift that I thought there's more to understanding about this.
Mhm.
And then as the kids grew, the same thing happened. Our first was a little stinker. And I found out that he was just a very active, smart little boy, and he was bored. And at 2 years of age, he bit his little friend next door, and I was humiliated. Pastor's wife and my boy
Oh no.
bites the child next door, same age as him in the sandbox. And the mom was so good.
Mm.
She didn't put an end to the boys playing together.
Mm.
She told me what happened, and she could see that I was just mortally wounded.
Mm.
And before I even made any action towards my son,
Mhm.
she said, "Isn't it something? They're all just little sinners in need of grace."
Ah.
I was so happy to be a neighbor to that woman.
Yeah.
She had 2 older children, and she didn't qualify me.
Mm.
She accepted me, even with her son being mortally wounded by mine.
Mm.
Mortally. I mean, that's the way it felt.
Sure. Yeah.
My son's not gonna do this. And then as the kids went on, they had their own little issues. And I thought, this isn't easy. This isn't by the books. It's by grace.
Well.
And I came across a woman later on in life, and she was relating her experience with her 2 children, and they always bickered, she said.
Mhm.
So they were teens and young adults, and they were going to have their last big family vacation. And they had a van, okay, a van for 4 people. And she said, we can have a nice family vacation. She said, they each had their own seat, they had their own stuff, and we're going to have a trip going north. and it's going to be pleasant. She had a whole life of this. And they started bickering in the back seat. And she turned around and she said, "You know what you need? Space and grace."
Space and grace.
And that has stuck with me. And I thought, yeah, that's what it's like to be in a family. You need space and grace.
Hmm.
We're all different humans,
Yes.
and we're all spiritual beings. And I just love that picture. And we're all wanting our spirits to land right side up instead of in a knot and in a corner. And as parents, we want that for our children desperately. My one granddaughter just started kindergarten, and her first day was yesterday.
Oh.
And so I talked with my daughter-in-law, and she sent these emojis with the big wide eyes. And she said her daughter had a fun day,
Yeah.
but mommy had that kind of day. Like, how did it really go?
Right.
And I've seen kindergarten parent after kindergarten parent go through that same thing.
Yes.
And I always say to kindergarten parents, yes, follow your kids to school. Go with them.
Mm-hmm.
One of my other grandchildren, my daughter-in-law did that. She got to school because the child had to go the way that the school had said they'd go. And she had to ride the bus. Okay. So she had to get off the bus, and her mother was waiting in the lineup at the school with her camera ready. And her daughter says, "Mom, what are you doing here?"
Yeah, some kids
Yeah.
are like that.
Yes. So, that idea of space and grace and
Mhm.
knowing that we're all human.
Yes.
We all have that same seed in us. We are spiritual beings.
Mm.
And my upbringing did give me assurance and confidence and excitement. So, yeah, I was excited to be a mom. I could hardly wait. I think my husband did better at waiting than I did. I think he was more practical. I was ready to be mom.
Well,
So,
I don't think you stopped there because after being a mom, you started studying more.
oh, yes, 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 because there were things that presented themselves, questions that I had
Yeah.
because of the development of our children.
Yes. So
And definitely.
in your
Mhm.
graduate program, you learned about how the brain works, how we as humans develop socially, emotionally, and cognitively,
Mhm.
but you noticed there was something missing, the spiritual piece. Then, from your studies, you remembered from Hebrew, man is looked upon as a whole, not separate things.
Mhm.
So there was a turning point. You started to notice deeper questions about child spirituality, and then you heard the phrase, well, parents are not doing their job, which is disheartening for many of us because we think we're doing all we can.
Exactly. Mhm.
So what made you lean and start researching what others seem to overlook? What got you? Tell me more about your research and what
Okay.
got you going.
Um, my research really kind of goes back, my thought process, because I've always been interested in people and how they are who they are.
Mm.
And I was very interested in special education and the differences in people and how they presented. And I was also, I just call myself a justice nerd.
Mhm.
I and I think it's because of what I grew up with as a young child with social unrest. And I didn't see it that way when I was in elementary school.
Mm. It was normal.
There was no color of skin.
Mm.
And I had children on the playground treat me differently. I'm going, what's wrong with them?
Mm.
I don't see you any different than me. And then I knew the the Shema, love the Lord with all your heart, your soul, your mind.
Mhm.
When what Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. I
Yes.
knew that. I knew what it meant.
Yes.
And it was lived out in our household. So I didn't quite understand why we only could look at certain aspects of the human. And when in college and in psychology, I would write papers for my psych professors. This was a Christian liberal arts
Mhm.
college, and I would reference my Christian ed material, and the teacher would not give me credit for that as a resource.
Mm.
And I wondered about that. I was very confused
Mhm.
because for me, the person was a whole.
Yeah.
And we always talked about that, but
Yeah.
I always looked at it as, yeah, God fits here, he fits here, he fits here, he fits here.
Right.
We're one person. And so I started trying to understand that. And that's when I started finding out what the Hebrew meant. And I always has piqued my interest. Why was it written that way? Why did Jesus answer when asked, what's the greatest commandment? He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor. The second one is just like it. Love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
I thought, what is this? So that I'm a very curious person. Very curious. My mother would always give me that adjective, that adage, curiosity killed the cat, right? And Chris will always remind me, my husband will always remind me, and success brought him back. And I thought, okay,
Yeah.
I got to finish the phrase.
Yes.
But my mom, I was a handful for my mother. She would always turn me over to my father just because, well, I was third. And right after me came my next youngest sister. She's only 14 months younger than I am.
Wow.
And so she was
She was
busy.
busy.
She was busy.
Yep.
And she did need dad to help with all of that.
Right.
And I was very curious, very curious. So I did things that were more than my mom could handle. So that curiosity, that idea and that curiosity, why people are the way they are, was something that really spurred me on into wanting to go to college and to study that. But because I was so geared with being brought up in a Christian church and being coached to have a ministry and to be reaching out to people, I thought, well, I'll go into Christian education because education was a big part of our family. And so I thought, well, I'll not just be a teacher, I'll be a Christian educator. I knew I'd study the Bible, which I loved doing and did as a teenager, led Bible study groups and that kind of thing. So I enjoyed that. I was curious. And I can remember, so I had that pathway of curiosity. So with having that problem with a degree where I was doing psychology along with Christian education, and I couldn't go back and forth. And then I had an abnormal psych class, brand new book. And I looked at the book and I was so disheartened because religion was in the section of the book that I didn't think it should belong in. It was in neurosis. And I thought, why does religion fit in neurosis? So I learned about that and I thought, why can't we talk together? Because man is a whole being.
Yeah.
And, I know the stories that Jesus where he cast out demons.
Yes.
And I know, some thoughts behind what people would have considered the demons to be. And I knew, from being around different people that different people had different abilities. There was a man in our church that was gassed in the war. And he was in and out of the mental hospital. His wife would bring him to church every once in a while. So I had that in my upbringing. I knew this man. And there was a fireman that attended our church, and he was very helpful when that man was in the service because he would do different things. And then he'd have to go back to the hospital. So, that curiosity about how we are made and why we are what we are was with me. So when I got to college, and that was the issue, I was very discouraged. So what happened is I thought, well, that's the way it is. We're going to have to talk about the spiritual man, and we're going to have to talk about the other man. Then, when I had this opportunity to study some curricula resource that a particular church was using, I went for the training. And I thought, I've really got to learn this because I've got to train staff. I've got to staff the church with this curriculum. And it was so awesome. I'd never experienced it before. It was a new curriculum, just come out, and I was handed it. The church wanted to use it. They wanted to look at it. They'd started using it. So I looked into this and I got to be trained, and I was really excited about that. But in the process of trying to understand what was going on, I started doing research on the computer about the spirituality of children and started reading books about that. And what popped up into my research was Child Spirituality Conference. It was
Mm.
a triennial conference, and it was started at the turn of the century, well, just before the turn of the century. And it was started by people at the graduate level. And I was so excited about what I was finding. So I thought, I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to see how far I can go with it.
Mhm.
So I got in touch and I said, I want to go. And I checked with the church, and church paid for my way to go. Oh man, I was just so excited
Wow.
because my curiosity was piqued. And what I found out, and this was a turning point for me. Um, I was able to audit a graduate level course on researching the spiritual life of the child and talking about the spiritual dimension of the child. And I was so excited because it involved theory and practice, and it involved research. And a lot of my Christian education background, I had to evaluate curriculum in my course studies. I had to be able to write curriculum in my undergraduate work. I had to be able to put all the things out there to grab the child's attention so they could learn it and so they could take it with them. And my experience working with my husband in the churches, and then before, along with this curiosity of why we separate man,
Mhm.
there were so many curiosities, it was difficult to get staff. I'm going, why? What's going on here? And I'd try to get school teachers to teach.
Mhm.
They were the hardest people to get to teach. And I thought, well, they're busy all week. They need a break on weekends. So I just was working with that. So when I went to the conference and I audited this class, I was given material that I had to read in preparation for auditing this course. And one was The Spirituality of the Child by Robert Coles, and highly awarded children's psychologist that did research on the spirituality of the child. And I can remember reading this book and delighted and just enthralled with it. And I remember the night I was reading the book in bed,
Mhm.
and there was just this awesome experience that I had. And the book just fell in my lap. And I said, I found an answer. Man is one, and we can talk together.
Mm.
Because this man had started to do empirical work as a scientist, as a clinician, as a psychologist, and he was recording it, and he was saying this is the spiritual life of the child. Before, there was no reciprocity between religion and social sciences. They didn't talk together. And I thought, what's wrong with us? Why can't we get this together? We're always doing separate, because I saw churches struggling with abilities. I'm going, something's not right. People with different abilities also love Jesus.
Right.
And so that's the beginning of my curiosity and my delight. So I thought, I can go study again. Finally, I have something to do. And in that course, we talked about theories of development. And I did not have that. I found out later that my husband did have some of that in seminary.
Mm.
And what I knew from education was pretty much a lot of stage theory from Piaget. And that was pretty much what all of our education is based on stage theory.
Mm.
And I had questions about that too.
Mm.
So anyway, there's a lot of questioning that went on in my life. But at that point, I found an aha that I could talk and we could talk together. And there was sharing. And I remember asking one of the professors that was co-teaching this class. And I said, do you think that Robert Cole's work was a turning point for religion and social sciences to share research? And he said, absolutely.
Mm.
So he didn't say it that way. He did it like a good professor. He says, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you go study it, you
Yeah.
go find out.
Right.
So anyway, that was a turning point for me.
Huh.
So I started listening and I started thinking about it. And one of the things that you mentioned about my question, what happened when I took this education, early childhood development master's degree, I heard that phrase there. And I thought, wow,
Mm.
I thought that only floated around in churches,
Right.
that the parents aren't doing what they should be doing. And it wasn't. It came out of education. And then I got very curious and I started listening for it. And I found out that it wasn't generational because I would expect it
Right.
to come from generation, that the older would talk about the younger that way.
Sure.
They're not doing their job. They haven't learned their lessons. They don't know. But I found it wasn't. Peer-to-peers were doing it.
Mm.
And I thought, why are we doing this?
Mm.
No, it's not encouraging, like you noted.
Right.
It's not encouraging.
No.
But I think people were doing it because people have been searching for answers
Yes.
because they're struggling.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, as I got to the end of my master's, that was such a burning, burning question. I thought, what am I going to do with this? I thought, well, I'll go on and I'll study some more and I'll get into a seminary and I'll start studying other theory of development, spiritual theory of development, child spirituality and formation, because I started that going to these conferences, and these were only triennial, so they only happened every 3 years.
Mm.
And what these conferences are, it's called now Child Spirituality Summit, are academic conferences where they talk about research and about best practices and talk about it at an academic level. So it needs praxis. It needs to be worked out.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are peoples that have taken it and put it into curricula and have put this, how children are formed spiritually, into the structure of curricular resources. And they've done it. And I'm excited about that.
Mm.
And they've done it with a background with good psychology, sound thinking, and with the social emotional health piece.
Mm-hmm.
Because, the church would always, I run into this. I don't know if it was across the board with churches, but if there was any social emotional things, well, you needed to fix your life with God, right? But there was more to it than that. Because man is fearfully and wonderfully made.
True.
And there are things that happen in the makeup of a man that causes things to function differently. We have called it irregulars or deficiencies. But God, he's over it all.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's illness, sometimes it's accident, sometimes it's poor development with the fetus in utero because of trauma or because of nutrition, or many different ways.
Right.
Where you have different abilities being born. So I was intrigued to study that in my master's program. But I still was thinking, but what about the spiritual formation? Because man is a whole being.
Yes.
So I took that question and I thought, what am I going to do with it? And I also was then looking at research, not just quantitative, but qualitative research.
Hey guys, this is the end of episode 5. Don't worry, there is more of Miss Becky DeBlaey coming on episode 6. So far, my biggest aha moments is our perspective. When we see children as gifts and we understand we have choices with these gifts, it puts things in a different lens. It was also helpful to understand man as a whole and not separate aspects. I invite you to join me on episode 6 to learn of what Ms. DeBlaey discovered in her research with the spiritual formation of a child. Stay tuned, and I'll see you on the next one.